Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. Today in Shop Talk, we're going to take some of your best questions from the viewer email and comments that come in through the YouTube videos, and we'll jump right in immediately. I'll be joined by my co-host, Glen. How you doing, Glen?
I'm doing well, Dave. Doing really well.
Good to hear it. What's our first question?
Well, the first question is going to start with me trying to pronounce the word heterogeneous.
Heterogeneous, okay.
Did I say that correctly? Yeah, I
Close
messed
enough.
it badly last time. Heterogeneous cores, blah, blah, blah. Martin Krischuk says at 9:30, he says, the more interesting question is, why are we only using 2 rings while most CPUs support 4 rings? VMS used 4 and even OS2 used 3.
OS2 had a slightly different case because it used separate cores for symmetric multitasking, which NT did not need to have because it used asymmetric. Or is it the other way around? I can never remember which term is which, but
Right.
On OS2, certain cores were dedicated to just doing kernel work, and some cores were dedicated to just doing user work. And so it was sort of multi-processing or multi-CPU, but not fully because of that. So NT just uses the 2 levels, 0 and 3. I don't know why it wasn't 0 and 1, maybe to give them some room in between, but could they add more levels? Yes, they could architecturally, but what they've done instead is they've added virtual trust levels. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, virtual trust levels. And so that gives you sort of like a secure kernel within the kernel, and even the regular kernel can't read its memory or mess with it or get into it. Well, how does that work? Well, there's another ring, and this is the addition of the extra ring, and it's ring -1. And it's actually the hypervisor, which runs under the operating system. So the operating system itself will always have just 2 rings, 0 and 3, as far as I know. But you can insert another layer underneath that, ring -1, which is the hypervisor, and it can set up a secure enclave that only certain memory is readable, and it can be encrypted with the hardware and all kinds of things. So the other sessions that are running in the actual operating system have no shot at seeing that. And so Microsoft is also trying to give visibility into the kernel in ways that vendors need, maybe not the anti-cheat guys, but certainly the guys that do security software and verification, that kind of thing, give them the ability to do what they need to do without being in ring 0 in the kernel. So between those two things, I'm not content to call it crash-proof Windows, but that's the initiative, right? They're trying to get everybody else out of ring 0, out of the kernel,
Right.
Because the reality is, and I know I'm probably going to be blamed for being too close to the problem, but 95% of the time when your machine blue screens, it's not Windows itself that's blue screening. It's because of a driver or an interaction with the driver that's running in ring 0. Because out of the box, it's pretty well tested. I mean, I've had a Dell 7875 workstation here for a year that has never crashed on me, running Windows and a hypervisor, and then Linux and Windows under the hypervisor, and it's been solid. It's taken a Windows Update editing video time and rebooted on me, but it's never just crashed.
Oh, that's because you have no drivers installed on it.
That's exactly why. The only driver I've installed is NVIDIA, and it came on the box anyway, but I've upgraded it, so...
So this ring -1, I know it's not semantics, but is that sort of like 3 rings, 0 and 3 and a -1, or the -1 is kind of a pseudo ring?
It is. It's a pseudo ring because the CPU is
Right.
still really running in ring 0. It's just
Right.
running in ring 0 of a different operating system context that is under the control of the hypervisor. So it's, you know, the old turtle's all the way down. It's just the next lower turtle, and there is a bottom turtle somewhere in that case.
Oh, okay. So back on some of this multitask option stuff, MCC 8088 says, on the subject of DOS multitasking, I remember Desqview and Desqview X being popular options to run, especially on BBSs back in the day. You got any insight into how those worked?
A little bit. They would use the CPU's 286, 386 mode to set up virtual address spaces and then run a copy of DOS in one of those address spaces. And then you could have another address space, and there'd be another copy of DOS running in that. And ideally, things that were the same between both, the MMU would just map them to the same memory. So having 2 copies of DOS did not necessarily require 2 times as much memory, depending on how well Desqview was architected, and I don't know the answer to that. I was never a user of it. I had a friend way back when that ran a BBS, and I think he was using Desqview at some point in order to multitask and run the multiple BBS sessions on a single host. So it's not something I have experience with, but I certainly did hear of it back in the day. I was on the Amiga, so I wasn't craving a way to multitask DOS.
Yeah. A little bit, sort of a fact check or question here, Bunny99s. Where did you get that information from? Talking about that the actual value of max path is 260, not 250. And I think when the question was raised, they said 265. I assumed it would be 256.
But I thought I said 260.
Yeah, I said, yeah.
Check the tape. Roll the tape.
Yeah, well, check
I'm sure
the tape.
I said 260, because I know it's 260. Yeah, I think you're going to be stuck with, I think it's 260, not 256, but...
Okay, yeah, he
max path
typed
is
265. I assumed it was supposed to be 256, but... Yeah.
I think it's 260, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked in a long time.
Yeah, there you go. 'Cause
C:\\,
they said the reason
adds 3. And an
they said the
alternator.
reason is the drive letter, the colon, the first backslash,
Yeah.
as well as the null terminating character were not counted. So that's fine. We got that clear. It's definitely 260. You said 260. No need to check the tape.
Don't even check.
The next one, Tim Chambers. Is there any file system or systems that can nest many smaller files into a larger cluster?
Yes. So it's just a limitation of FAT that when FAT was designed, clusters could be, maybe 4 sectors or something like that, and that was big enough to address most hard drives of the day. But then as things got larger and larger and larger, they would no longer fit with small cluster sizes, and so the cluster sizes grew larger and larger and larger. And that's a limitation of FAT, only being able to have a fixed number of clusters, no matter how many sectors you have. And so the clusters have to get bigger to take up the ratio there. There are many file systems that don't have that limitation, designed later. NTFS doesn't have any such limitation. It can be full of tons of small files and is actually pretty good, not on removable media, but on regular media.
Right.
It's good with caching and small file management, stuff like that. And ext4 on Linux, also very good. So yeah, they don't have those limitations because they weren't designed for 16-bit DOS, I guess.
Ivan or Ivan Maglica. Is it possible to talk a little bit about OLE32 and how it worked?
A little bit, yeah. I'm more familiar with COM, which is the underlying technology that OLE is built on.
Right.
So it's COM on the bottom and OLE on top of that. And the bottom level is, imagine you have, if you're a programmer, you have a C++ object. And all that is an address in memory followed by a bunch of jump table, which is the V table for the object. So if it has 5 methods on the object or on the class, you're going to find 5 entries in the V table. What COM did was standardize that across machines, so you can take an object and even run it in a different memory space, or even in theory with DCOM on a different machine. You simply call through your V pointer like you're talking to the object like it's normal C, and magically it happens through RPC on a different machine entirely. So once you've got that plumbing all in place, you can build on top of that. And OLE was object linking and embedding. And so it allowed you to take a Word document, for example, and insert it into a Excel spreadsheet, or vice versa, an Excel chart into a Word document, probably more common. And so it used interfaces that were well-defined and created by Microsoft to manage everything about being in place and managing the toolbars and title bars and menus and everything else that has to change. And that's part of OLE. And COM is the plumbing that makes it all work.
Okay.
That's
That's the part that you were working on, was the COM part of the OLE.
Actually, I was working on OLE. I was using the presentation cache for object insertions. But I knew by the time I was done, I only worked on OLE itself for about 3 or 4 months, and then I used COM for many years, so I'm more familiar with COM. And there's a great book on COM called Essential COM by Don Box. And it's the one and only book you need on COM, and if you ever have to deal with COM, you should absolutely read it, because it made a lot more sense.
Throwaway 6478 says, when you're talking about the DHCP addresses, you reserve a certain block. I think he says, why 50? Why not a round number like 32 or 64?
Am I not a man? I have 10 fingers. Base 10, baby.
Devo. Yeah.
Yeah. Got the reference. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't. I don't think there's any real benefit other than it might fit in the mask easier, but I don't think the CPU or the routing is so advanced that it's masking bits like that. So I assume it's just doing a less than comparison when it's creating the DHCP tables. So don't know. Didn't feel like there was a good reason to force myself to a power of 2 in that case.
Yeah. Dan McGowan. Dave, do you run a management software to monitor your network? If so, is it commercial or open source?
I run all Unify networking here, with the exception of one QNAP switch, and everything else is Unify. And so they have the Unify manager and management system for their controller, and so that's what I use. And it has intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, all those firewalls, routing, port forwarding, all the kind of things you expect in a router. Plus, it's a fully fledged switching operating system, I guess, in a way, a router operating system. So it is fairly powerful, and it does everything I need it to do.
Now, you've been running Unify for a few years, and you just recently upgraded all your hardware. And then I think we talked about it in some previous episodes, a little bit of a network problem going on. Well, you and Dave Sebesky, I guess, were both having an issue. And you've now resolved yours with the help of Unify.
So I had 3 things going on all at once. I had some of my switches had been switched to STP instead of RSTP for the spanning tree protocol to figure out if there's loops. And so it was detecting false loops. And then fixed that. And then I ran out of DHCP addresses for my actual switches because my DHCP reservation was too small. I had so many devices on my network, it hit the end of the table, couldn't grow it anymore, and so it could not give IP addresses to the switches. So I fixed that by going through and giving them all static IPs, expanding my subnet, and then having a loss of DHCP left over. But then I was still having it drop out, and it was really frustrating because the entire network would just disappear and come back in 1 to 3 minutes. You couldn't ping the router, you couldn't see the internet, you could see other machines on the network, but the router would go away. And it would do this every 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. So everything on our house now, from phones to security cameras to the internet and doorbells, stuff like that, cameras, is all internet or Ethernet at least. So having it drop out was really not making me popular in the family's books. And, you know, kids are trying to game and their game would lock up for 3 minutes and they would die and they'd be bitter. So long story short, what it turned out to be, and this was just weeks of flailing, trying different settings, rebooting, seeing what would stick. It turned out that when I submitted my logs to Unify, they found that some switches had flow control turned on and some did not. So I went through and I created a master switch policy that said I always want flow control off and I always want jumbo packets off for now and the other various settings, and I applied it to all switches. And once they were all the same and all had flow control turned off, it has never had an issue again. So.
And now you said, and so you're working with Unify on this, and you said you sent your logs to them. So what did you do to create that log file?
Oh, you just go into the administrative panel on the router itself, and under support, I think there's a create diagnostic dump, which takes about 5 minutes. It's big. I was gigabytes. It's hundreds of megabytes. I had to send it by Apple mail drop to get it to them. So.
But I thought you had created a file though to report back. You were basically sort of pinging Google every minute or so.
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
Hey, Google.
I've still got that running and it hasn't missed a beat. So every 1 second, I ask, hey, Google. And Google says, what? I go, nothing. And then I ask, hey, Google. What? Nothing. So I'm just checking if Google is still there. And when it would drop out, I would print a log message and log the time and date so they could go into the database of whatever was going on in their diagnostic data and find out at this time it went down, what was happening then.
Right.
And
so you could point them where in the logs to look for.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. You mentioned that the aggravation for the rest of the family. Not only are you in charge of the internet in the house and all the technology, but you have a certain amount of experience with that. So the expectation, I would say, is probably higher for you than it is for me running my network here. But I do recognize too. You got once you got that fixed, that we were chatting the other night, and your wife came in and she expressed great gratitude that the internet had been solid for about 3 days now. It was very, very obvious that she was pleased with the result.
Yeah, it was really frustrating because I've got an industrial strength network. I have 2 ISPs and actually 3 if you count the cellular, which just for the alarm panel as a fallback. And the generator has cellular of its own. I have Starlink, I have Ziply Fiber, and I just got rid of T-Mobile because I was paying for that too. Yeah. And so it would fall over. If one died, it would always go to the next one. And so I've got all this backup and everything else, and nothing worked. So it was really frustrating to have, industrial strength failover system set up, and then I can't even see my router.
And you couldn't blame Microsoft. No.
I'm sure it was their fault somehow. But
Buffalo Expat Bill. I've seen you mention your LED lighting system before. I've used ESP32 with OLED displays, Wi-Fi, and sensors so far. Do you have a project you referenced or one that you're willing to share about the setup or build?
Sure. All my code for all my LED stuff, from matrices to strips to everything I do, is available on GitHub. And just go to nightdriverled.com. Or if you go to GitHub and find my profile, Dave PL, you'll find the Night Driver strip and Night Driver server. You'll find all the code on GitHub. It's actually in the Plumber Software LLC, of which I'm a member. Okay. I'm the owning member, I think.
Cal 2127. If there were anything internal you could go back and rewrite within Windows with modern knowledge, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh, I know what it would be. It would be the zip file support. I would like to make it multi-threaded and fast and good. It was fast and good when you had 1 CPU core, but now that you have 64 cores and it uses exactly 1 to decrypt your file, it's a little frustrating. And it was also written with sort of a bastardized MFC because I had initially written it in MFC, which is Microsoft Foundation classes, which is a set of templates that you can use to create Windows and so on. But we don't use them in the operating system. They're not, or we never did in Windows. And so I had to strip all that out and kind of write shims to make it still work. So I'm not saying it's gross, but it's not the way I would have written it if I would have known that I wasn't going to use MFC. So yeah, I'd love to go back and take another shot at that one with modern C++ tools and technologies and things
Okay,
I know now that I didn't know then.
Would you use Copilot or ChatGPT to help you out with
Absolutely.
that, or would you just do it yourself?
Coding like an old barbarian, typing in void main void.
Dave, the old barbarian, yeah. Read that through your AI visualizer, see what it says in terms of a Simpson-style cartoon, Dave the Barbarian. Samuel Magalocusts. Hey Dave, making a Windows app for the first time. I'm using Microsoft's newer template called WinUI 3. I was wondering, is it still possible to make a Windows app in raw C code only?
Yes. You can write them in assembly. I've got an episode called How to Write the World's Smallest Windows Application. And we do it, I think, first in C, and then I do it in assembly language. And then other people run wild with it, and it's like 374 bytes or some crazy number. The whole point is that it's a full-fledged Windows app that paints Hello World and has menus and gadgets and a client area. It's not just a print Hello app. It's a full Windows app, and it's like tiny. So,
what was the title on that one?
World's smallest Windows application, perhaps. That'll probably find it.
Yep.
I'm probably not the only person to try it, but I'm sure it'll come up with mine somewhere.
And that's on the Dave's Garage channel.
Yeah.
Genghis John, he had a post to a YouTube short here. He says, I just now saw the above clip for the first time, and I could only think of one thing. Where was Dave Plummer that day? Was he there? If so, what color shirt did he wear? Can you please tell us, Dave?
Well, actually, it's Genghis John. But, that's the Windows 95 launch. And I contributed code into Windows 95 when I worked on Olay, so I got to ship it for Windows 95 and stuff. But by the time Windows 95 actually shipped, I had gone and moved on to the NT team. So I was no longer on the Windows 95 team, so I didn't get an invite. So I just stood outside the chain link fence, trying to peek over, see what's going on. Crying little salty tears. No.
What color shirt would you have wanted to wear, though, if you were there?
Oh, it's such, yellow, maybe blue, green, or red. I'm not sure. Okay. Actually, they might have had things like red with kernel. I have no idea what the colors signified.
And Nerd is piped up again. We're still getting some grief. No timestamps. Instant FU. So
type them in, baby, or quit complaining. I'm not sitting there and watching this whole thing and writing down timestamps.
I'll see what I can do. I might be able to pop some in and send them, but it's I got to find out how much effort it's going to take on my part to do that. But
well, we have an AI transcript of the episode, and it has timestamps. But the problem is, once you edit the episode, those timestamps are off. And I don't want to give you wrong timestamps. That's worse than no timestamps. So
maybe we should do timestamps just for Nerd, and they're wrong.
Oh yeah.
You'll never know. Okay, Serious Cat, 2231. Was your system AMD or Intel?
I was, well, it doesn't say which system, but currently I'm all AMD. I do have one machine here, an old Storinator motherboard, which is a Xeon Silver 4216. But that is my only Intel chip that I have. Everything else is AMD, and it's not brand loyalty. It's just, that seems to be what fits my needs when I go to buy it. Especially when you're buying a Threadripper, you don't have that many choices. In the olden days, I ran Intel until I ran Cyrix. I remember Cyrix DX40 was my first big purchase, 386 DX40. And then I think I was all Intel again until the i4770K, which I had for, it feels like 10 years that I had that desktop. And then I bought the Threadripper 3970 about 6 years ago. And I just replaced that with the HP Z2 Mini, which is just about as fast, but faster single core. So I don't have a big killer Windows desktop right now. It's fast enough for everything I do.
What's the machine that's now sort of lying abandoned in your office in the house?
That's the Threadripper 3970X.
Oh, okay. That's for that
the old
guy.
Desktop machine.
Where do we go next? A. Williams, 1701. You have a Mac? On purpose? WTF is wrong with you, dude?
Just trying to get some work done, man. Going where the tools are. I like Final Cut. That's my excuse.
All my work stuff and young computer life was all PC based. And then, whenever 15 years ago got a Mac, and I kind of prefer to be a little bit comfortable in both of those.
Yeah,
Linux one is definitely not anybody, but you've got a level of comfort and skill for sure in the PC world, for sure with your Windows system and in Linux and all that stuff as well. So I guess there are folks who they just want one system, that's it. Screw all the other ones.
If they had not canceled Movie Maker, I'd still probably be on the PC. And not like I'm a big Movie Maker advocate, but I wanted to edit some video. First thing I did for the channel, and so I went to find a video editor because I had used Pinnacle 9 Studio for years to edit my home videos, and no offense to Pinnacle, but it's not ready for primetime desktop editing of today. Maybe their new version is. I have no idea. But I couldn't find that, and it didn't work, and so I went to get Movie Maker, and I could not find Movie Maker to save my life. It took it out of the product at some point and removed it from the web, and it's no longer something you can download, at least that I could find. So I'm like, well, I've got a MacBook, and even though I always used it boot camped into Windows, I thought, well, I'll just boot it into the Mac side, and I'll use their iMovie free thing. But then I thought, well, if I'm going to learn something, I might as well learn Final Cut, and there's a free trial, and so I did that. And then once you get used to Final Cut, now you've bought Final Cut, and you've got a Mac, you're hooked. Especially once you get the iPhone in that mix and all your iMessages come up on the desktop. So if it wasn't for video editing and iMessage, I would still be 100% Windows, I think.
I'm halfway through my free trial on the Final Cut, so I'm going to have to pony up some cash in about 37 days or something. But
was it $200, I think? Something like that?
maybe in American dollars. In Canadian ones, it's more like 400. But yeah. It's all fake money.
Well, tariffs
up here in
and all
Canada,
that.
anyways. Well, tariffs, yeah. Speaking of which, Kieran K then says, does anyone else hear a background noise, mostly when it cuts to Dave? Sounds like someone typing on a typewriter. That would have been me. I got a clicky little DOS keyboard here, and it was making a tremendous amount of noise that I failed to notice. So I have addressed that. Dave and he mentioned it too, and so I've actually, today I still have that keyboard. I've got a wireless Mac keyboard in that's nice.
Oh, little ones, yeah.
So now nobody can hear it, but I'll pay attention and knock it out if it's there. Anyway, that'll get fixed in production. Jim Bond, hey, when do we get an update on the second Vax?
It's right there. It's sitting on a pallet, wrapped in foam, strapped down. I haven't even opened it yet, but I do hope to soon. It's just a project that I kind of want to do start to end and film the whole thing. Because when I did the first Vax, I didn't know what I was doing yet. I'd never even seen a Vax. So I couldn't film for 3 weeks as I was learning what I was doing. And then when I was done, it was together. I didn't want to take it apart to show everybody. But this one I'm going to redo separately, and I'll kind of go through it and film as I go. So,
couple last questions here. Rob01. Are you some kind of programming god, Dave?
No.
Okay.
But you must subscribe to appease me.
That's yeah, which gets to the next one. The first Ed says, just 1 million sub channel wasn't enough, my guy? Righto, subscribed. So again, that's a nice little segue to the fact that this is Shop Talk coming on your secondary channel, Dave's Attic.
Yeah, I would like to release these on the main channel, and who knows, maybe one day I will try again. But the audiences seemed different enough that it seemed, which doesn't make any sense because the audience for this one should be the people watching the other ones, but maybe it was just the regular channel viewers didn't like the podcast universally, and then that hurts the algorithm. So that's why it's on a second channel.
They're two different styles of presentation, right? One is
Yeah.
solely you doing some real technical stuff. This other one is more of me throwing questions at you. So I don't know. If people don't like that, the algorithm doesn't like it, but that's how it is. You're not the only one doing it with two channels, but I think it's important for folks to, again, remind them that you do have two channels. The main stuff comes on Dave's Garage. That's the 1 million subscriber plus, and this is Dave's Attic, the second channel, and this is where we answer questions from both of those channels roughly every week, and we post it out on Friday. So if you have questions on either one, put them in the comments. Make sure it's got a question mark in it, because that's how I pull them out, and then we review them and select them from there.
Yeah, of course, if you're not already subscribed to this channel because you are a fan of Dave's Garage and you got this episode and saw it and you want to maybe see another one at some point in your life, click subscribe. We won't overwhelm you. It's like once a week at most. So thanks for joining us out here in the shop, and thanks for your help tonight, Glenn. Appreciate it, and we'll see you all next time around. Bye-bye. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.